would now like to take this opportunity to invite on stage Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam, Minister for Manpower and Second Minister for Defence, Mr. Ng Eng Hen, and Party Vice Chairman, Minister Associate Professor Yaakob Ibrahim.
We shall now invite Mr. Louis Tak Yew, MP-elect for Tanjong Pagar GRC, to speak to us. Mr. Louis, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Very good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for braving this heat to share part of your lunch hour with us. I'm going to be speaking only in English today because I was advised that my Army, Hokkien and Bahasa were not quite up to the mark. But it didn't say I couldn't tell you a story, so I'm going to start with a story. It's a story about crisis response, but I need you to listen to it carefully, alright? One day, a man, let's call him Mr. Jago, came to hospital in obvious pain. There was a huge boil on his thigh. You know, a boil is a big water bubble, alright? And so the doctor, Dr. Lau, looked at him, called the nurse over, there's a senior nurse by the name of Nurse Sim, and whispered some instructions to the nurse to take care of Mr. Jago. And then Dr. Lau went back to the next room where he was conversing with his friend, Dr. Tan. And Dr. Tan was saying, you know, you've got to be careful of Nurse Sim. She's very senior, but she gets confused part of the time. Just last week, I asked her to give 2 milligrams of morphine every 4 hours to a patient. And she ended up giving him 4 milligrams every 2 hours. It nearly killed him. Oh, and 2 days ago, I asked her to give 1 bottle of drip every 3 hours to another patient. And she ended up giving him 3 bottles every hour. He nearly burst. Just as they finished speaking, there was a series of blood-curdling screams coming from the next room. And both doctors were stunned. They just didn't know how to respond to this crisis that was developing, and they were stunned for a good 15-30 seconds. Until finally Dr. Lau raised his head and said, "Oh my goodness, I've just remembered, I asked Nurse Sim to prick Mr. Jago's boil." Didn't quite catch it, I'm sorry, we'll have to repeat it some other time. But frankly, this story is really about not how individuals make mistakes in dealing with their patients, but it's about how they respond to crisis. Because crisis moments are tests of character. The instinctive response tells us more about our convictions, our values. They tell us more about what we stand for, what we believe in, than all the carefully crafted words and beautifully written statements in documents and manifestos. The response can either sow doubt, mistrust, confusion, uncertainty, or it can enhance reputations, increase trust, or inspire confidence. And trust and confidence are some of the qualities and characteristics that we need to carefully nurture and guard jealously. The theme for my presentation today is really that the Singapore government inspires confidence. I could have approached it in a variety of angles and talk about many different aspects, but I just want to mention 2 areas that really stand out and distinguish us from other governments and other organizations. The first is what I've talked about briefly, which is crisis response, and the second is the ability to deliver on promises. Because you see, many governments, many organizations, many parties can make promises to deliver. But what has distinguished the PAP and the Singapore government in the past is this consistent ability to deliver on its promises. Let's talk about crisis response. You know, in the real world, our carefully crafted plans, our detailed and scripted playbooks don't account for all the different permutations. We have weathered numerous crises in the last 10 years, from the economic crisis to terrorism to SARS to dengue. And I think we can recall how Singapore and Singaporeans have all responded, with us emerging stronger and more united as a result. But what was most telling was our response to the tsunami crisis. This was 4 months into the term of a new Prime Minister, and it was, I think, for me, and for him and for the administration, a defining moment. You see, it wasn't really our crisis, it was our neighbour's crisis. But we responded with leadership, with urgency, as if it was our very own crisis. We can talk about the military deployments, we can talk about the international conference to draw attention and focus to the needs of the Indonesians. We can talk about the relief aid that eventually poured in, and so much more. But I also want to talk about our people's response, because this was equally telling. There was an outpouring of empathy and support from all of you for our neighbour in trouble. You see, crisis can bring out the worst in human behaviour, but in this case, all I can say is that it brought to the